Welcome, everybody, to the live Sober Heathen podcast. Dude, Lonnie, thank you for making that intro. I am over here. You can't see it when the intro's playing, but I am jamming, dude. It is rock solid. I listen to it 4 or 5 times before I start a live every single time, and I thank you, Lonnie, for that awesome intro. Great podcast today. This is a returning guest. The first time we dove into it a little bit, it was a great conversation, but I think it absolutely warrants another visit. Katie's great. She's doing a lot of great things on X. Super positive message. Whether TSM is going to be for you or not, it doesn't matter. Her message is a positive one, right? And I think we need to have more of those in the recovery community, as many of those as we can possibly have. So, yeah. Katie, thank you for joining me again. Welcome to the podcast. Just if you would, just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then what is the Sinclair Method?
Yeah, thanks for having me back again, Scott. I really appreciated connecting with you. I don't know how long we've been in touch now, maybe close to a year or something. So appreciate being able to, chat with you about these things, even though our recovery paths were different. Like, we're not saying my path is better than yours or vice versa. So it's really awesome to have these conversations. So just in brief, I struggled with alcohol for nearly 10 years. And we were talking before you hit record how you have your DARE shirt on. And I just remember before I developed my alcohol problems, I was like, that's something that happens to someone over there. Like, I'm invincible to this issue. Even though it runs in my family, I thought for some reason it wouldn't impact me. So in my early 20s, I started drinking really heavily, like a lot of people do in the US, since it's the legal drinking age. And I thought it was just a phase, something I would outgrow one day. But what happened was, within a few years of me really drinking very heavily, like, I was really into vodka when I first started drinking, and my boyfriend at the time, we lived together. We just get a half gallon every couple days and we go through it really quickly. And I just remember one day, I couldn't remember the last day that I'd been alcohol free. Like, it had been more than a year since I had one day without drinking. And so I was like, that's kind of scary. I'm like in my mid-20s. Let me take a break from alcohol and kind of detox. And it surprised me how difficult that week was. Like, I was truly white knuckling it and just kind of forcing myself not to drink, and kind of looking toward the end of that week-long break, like, okay, I can drink again on day 8. So I made it the 7 days, but by day 8, I returned back to it again. And that was really the first attempt of probably dozens of attempts of me trying to quit alcohol, whether I'd make it a day, a couple weeks, or a couple of months. I just kept trying and failing. Until in 2017, I learned about the Sinclair Method, which is a treatment that's been around for over 30 years, but a lot of people still don't know about it, which is just blows my mind. But when I first learned about it, I was like, this is too good to be true. Like, I didn't believe a treatment like that existed, but 2017, I learned about it, and it changed everything. And now I can't stop talking about it. I'm completely free from my alcohol addiction because of this treatment. And do you have any questions about that, or I can dive into the method?
Yeah. Let's talk about the method. But I want to point out something. I mean, you struggled with this for 10 years. This isn't something that you were, and then definitely for that last year, as you said, you couldn't remember a day that you went without alcohol. So people get off into the weeds and they want to talk about, real alcoholic and not real alcoholic and all this other crazy nonsense. 10 years is a problem, right? And you recognize that, and that especially that last year, and then you decide, okay, I want to do something about it. Mm-hmm. So now you found the Sinclair Method. Yeah, go ahead and talk about a little bit more. Okay, so I want to stop. I want to try the Sinclair Method. What do I do?
Yeah. And I want to say too, just real quickly, that, I sincerely wanted to get this issue under control for years before I found this method. Like, I genuinely was so sick and tired of it. I hated what it was doing to my life. And so sometimes I think when people don't understand addiction, they're like, oh, you don't really want to get better. But the truth
Yeah,
is, like, I, in my core, wanted to get better, but it seemed like my brain was hijacked by the alcohol to where, like, it was more powerful than my willpower to say, okay, I'm not going to drink. So
sure, sure.
um, that's where the Sinclair method was a game changer. It's not like any other treatment out there because this treatment works to fix issues with alcohol on a neurological level. And the term we use now, you mentioned the real alcoholic. The term that's used in like the medical community now is alcohol use disorder, and it has a whole list of questions from what's called the DSM-5, where a doctor can, decide if someone has an alcohol use disorder and where they fit on the spectrum. Is it mild? Is it moderate? Or is it severe? And somebody posted on Twitter recently about kind of this topic, and I think when people talk about real alcoholic, just because somebody isn't drinking like I was, like round the clock vodka,
Right.
doesn't mean they don't have an alcohol problem. I've met people, they drink 3 glasses of wine every night, but they have to have those 3 glasses. And if they don't, they're irritable and they're, frustrated. And that's a sign of alcohol withdrawal. So, kind of side tangent, like there's a
No, no,
spectrum of
that's
different levels of the disorder.
yep.
But with the Sinclair method, so again, it's been around for over 30 years. There's tons of clinical trials into this treatment. It uses the medication naltrexone, which is a generic, cheap, non-addictive medicine that is taken 1 hour before drinking alcohol. And what happens over time when someone takes this medicine and then drinks alcohol on it, that's the Sinclair method. You take naltrexone, you wait 1 hour, and you drink. This medicine is blocking receptors in the brain that would otherwise be getting a flood of endorphins and feel good hormones when we drink. And that's really why alcohol and any drug is addictive, is because it's very pleasurable and very rewarding. And so when drinking on naltrexone, it kind of blunts that pleasure. It's not an abuse. A lot of people confuse it with that. It's not like it makes you sick or it makes drinking this terrible experience. It just kind of tones it down a bit and makes it a little less exciting, a little less euphoric. And so for me, I started on this treatment as a daily drinker. And I noticed some changes in the beginning when I started on this medicine, but it was not an overnight fix. It's not like all of a sudden I was like free from the addiction. It was more subtle changes like, oh, I'm drinking a little more slowly, or my craving for alcohol is not as intense, or hey, I had an alcohol free day and it wasn't just an act of me white knuckling and willing
Right.
it. It was like I just didn't feel like drinking. And so, what happened for me over time with this treatment, what the research shows, and what happens for a lot of us is when we drink repeatedly on this medicine, it causes our brain to really unlearn the alcohol addiction because we drink, we don't get the same rewarding effects. It can still be enjoyable, but it's not as enjoyable. And just as an example, the longer I was on the treatment, I'd be like, yeah, I feel like some wine. Take naltrexone, and I'd have 1, 2 glasses, and I'd be like, I'm good. I don't need any more wine. Like, it gave me
Wow.
this off switch that I never had before. And so, for a lot of people through this treatment over time, usually 6 months, 12 months, maybe a year and a half or so, they get to a place where they're just indifferent to alcohol. And when that happens, they can choose to drink in moderation, like champagne at a wedding or wine at a Friday night, and not binge or go overboard. They have this control. Or like me, I ended up quitting alcohol after a year on this treatment, really because I was just like so uninterested in alcohol. And I tell people I forgot to drink because I was just like, I didn't want to drink. So
That's
that's a
insane.
bit about the method.
That's crazy. So you're telling so you've seen people do the Sinclair method and turn back into moderate drinkers. They just drink at social events or weddings. You've seen that.
Oh, I've lost count how many times. I mean, I was one person, but I have a YouTube channel. I've got, I don't know, 30
Yeah.
success stories. Plus I've just worked as a coach. I was counting. I've coached over 200 people through this treatment. And so I've seen it more times than I can count.
And it's not crazy. Okay, so that's what I want people to understand. This isn't like this is like some wackadoo thing that's just you know even if and I'm what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to find common ground here where people can have open discussions and not get their feelings hurt, right? So even the big book says, and science has not yet done so, but one day it might.
Mm-hmm.
This could be the one day. 30 years
Exactly.
ago, when they started doing naltrexone and then doing the Sinclair method, this might be what Bill was talking about when science hasn't accomplished this yet.
Exactly.
The yet might have happened.
Yeah. And I was talking with Dr. Joseph Volpicelli. He's a researcher who was literally the one responsible for getting naltrexone FDA approved for alcoholism in the 90s. Like, he's a brilliant physician and researcher. And just talking to him yesterday about this, and he was like, Bill was more open-minded than that. Like, I think AA came from like him doing LSD or something. Don't quote me on that. That's like something I heard. But
I got you.
Like, if they kept updating the big book, they might now include naltrexone as an option or other medications as options or things outside of AA, but they have not been updating it for one reason or another. And I think the common ground is important, because what I've seen, there's a lot of people I've worked with and known who went from AA to TSM. And what I've heard over and over again is they tried AA. They even tried for decades off and on, some of these people, and they kept relapsing. They kept relapsing because they were craving alcohol, and it's that craving that causes people to relapse. Yeah, you might have a crappy day and that's the excuse, but you wouldn't do something if you didn't desire it anymore. So not to say that this is better than AA or we should offer this instead of AA. It's just anyone who's in recovery knows somebody who can't stay sober. And there's data to show that a lot of people relapse in traditional recovery. And so for people to know, like, hey, if you're struggling to stay sober, this might be like a small step you can take using this treatment that's got decades of research behind it, using a non-addictive medicine that will cost you less than $1 a pill.
Yeah, and that's and that kind of segues into things. So to kind of piggyback what you're saying about the LSD thing. So Bill had went through, he created AA and he did all these things and he was sober for years, but he couldn't get over the hump. It was that spiritual malady that he talked about. And so, yes, he did use, now LSD was legal through doctors then, and he used LSD, and then he had a spiritual awakening, and that's what really got him going in his recovery. So right there, you already know that the creator of this book was open-minded to other options, right? This is a good guideline to get some of your crap out, get it on paper, talk to somebody about it, but that wasn't the fix all. And he said that more than once. I was just reading an article this morning about that, that the steps weren't enough. So that segues into the next question was, so with the people that are working the Sinclair method, does doing the Sinclair method and gradually tapering down your drinking or just working the method itself, do most people also need therapy, or is it a combination of things? Because AA is like you just work the program and that's it. Yeah. But as being a recovery coach and seeing what I've seen, you can find a program like AA and you can go to those meetings, but you got to supplement that with something else too, like therapy or counseling.
Yeah, and the research shows that if someone's being prescribed naltrexone from their doctor, they should be doing it coupled with some type of behavioral support or counseling support. And the key there is that support cannot be promoting abstinence, which might sound crazy, but the way this method works is to help people reduce their drinking. So if they're going to a counselor that's like, you're still drinking, you need to stop drinking, it's really counteractive to how this treatment works over time to kind of remove the addiction neural pathways. So what the research showed is that counseling and therapy support, group support, is vital to success with the medicine, whatever that person wants to use. Like, we have a program, or there's free online Sinclair method groups, there's Facebook groups, people work with the therapist, whatever. But using a support program that is going to focus on alcohol reduction instead of forcing abstinence. And I was honestly humbled a few months into this treatment, because I went on the medicine thinking, great, this pill's going to help me drink less, like no more hangovers. And it did that. But a few months in, I was met with all of these emotions that I'd been numbing out and reasons why I was drinking that started to come to the surface because I was drinking less. I was not as numb because I was using the protocol. But I realized there was a lot more to my drinking patterns than simply like having a bad habit of drinking too much. So I actually had to make a lot of life changes. I took a leave of absence from work. I went to therapy. So I'm kind of one example about, yes, the medication's powerful, but I often tell people you have to meet it halfway and work to change your lifestyle and habits around drinking as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I wanted to bring that up because people will hear what they want to hear, and this is not an advertisement of take a pill and you're cured. That's not what it is. There's, like you said, meet halfway. I like the way you said that. So so as a person that has done the Sinclair method, we were talking about this before we came on. You reposted a video today, and make sure to check out Katie's stuff. I'll let her plug that anytime she wants throughout this discussion and at the end. But make sure to check out her content because it's great. But she posted a video today from 2017 after an incident at where she worked. You were 2.5 months in that video. Just as somebody that's done the Sinclair method, just talk a little bit like what you were feeling at best you can around 2 months.
Yeah.
2.5 months or so.
Yeah, so I reposted a video on my YouTube channel. It's Thrive Alcohol Recovery if you want to go find it. I just posted it the other day. But basically the video was talking about this experience I had at work where I used to work at a retreat center and someone came to stay. Long story short, he ended up passing out. The cleaners found him. He had a huge gash in his head and he had to be airlifted out of there and taken to a hospital because it's a really remote retreat center. And I was responsible for cleaning up his room and getting him all his stuff. And when I went through his stuff, all I found was like bottles of wine, liquor bottles, corks, wine glasses. Like clearly he had an alcohol problem, and that's what led to his fall in the first place. And he had to be airlifted out because he got so drunk he passed out and hit his head. So it was really interesting to be 2 months into the method and have that firsthand experience of someone who was decades older than me and probably decades in this alcohol use disorder cycle and the consequences that can come from that. So it was a very emotional experience for me because I struggled with alcohol for 10 years. At that time, I was still like late 20s, maybe 30. I'm not sure how old I was, about 29, 30. And just seeing myself in him and realizing like if I hadn't found this method and medication, who knows where I would have been in 5, 10, 20 years down the road. Because right before I learned about naltrexone, I was honestly surrendering to the fact. I remember it so clearly. I was sitting at my kitchen table just feeling so hopeless. Like, well, maybe I'm just an alcoholic. Like maybe that's the hand of cards I've been dealt in this life and I've just got to accept it. Like I was really kind of coming to terms with the fact that this was going to be a lifelong thing because I couldn't get out of the struggle. And so 2 months into the method, I was still drinking quite a bit at that time. I was probably still drinking like 5 days a week and, a decent amount when I was drinking. But I know from day one, when I started naltrexone, I never blacked out again. I never browned out again. So even though I was still drinking a lot, my drinking had curtailed to the point where I wasn't drinking to blackout, which I was drinking to blackout regularly, like a couple times a week, probably. And so I just remember being a couple months in, and that moment was very eye-opening for me and just kind of solidified my gratitude for being able to find this treatment accidentally and seeing the changes I had seen in myself just a couple months in. Again, I was still drinking a lot, but I wasn't blacking out anymore. I was seeing myself have more control. I was having these alcohol-free days that weren't very, very difficult. And I could just see this transformation starting to come in my life because of what this treatment was doing for me. So it was a very sobering experience to witness that, and also just made me feel very grateful and I remember thinking like, I feel like I dodged a bullet. Like for some reason I stumbled on this unknown treatment and it's actually working. Like it was a godsend, to be honest.
Jesus, it gets me excited. Like I don't know if I'm getting a dopamine hit talking about this or not, because I think I am. Like for people that are struggling, 2 months, okay? So 2 months and all of a sudden you're not blacking out. You're still drinking, but you're not blacking out. That is unthinkable for me to continue to drink and not black out.
Right.
And it's 2 months. So again, I talk a lot about AA, and I know that people that watch the podcast know that I'm not anti-AA. I think it helps people, and I want people to get the correct, not listen to what the gatekeepers are saying and the stuff that they're adding to it. So to tell somebody like, in 2 months time in AA, that's like nothing. It's like sit down, shut up, make coffee, take the cotton out of your ears and put it in your mouth kind of crap. You're nobody at 2 months, but at 2 months you are already having life changes with this medicine, and to a non-alcoholic, it might be like, so you weren't blacking out, but you're still drinking every day. What's the big deal? It's a big fucking deal.
Yeah.
It's a big fucking deal. So, and I want to say something else too that you'd mentioned, and I forgot to mention it after you were talking about the support groups and things. One of the worst things that can happen I feel, because it was one of the worst things that could happen to me. When I started AA and I got like a month into it and I started developing relationships, I relapsed. I lied through my ass to those people because I didn't want them to think a certain way of me. Now, whether they would have or not, that's my worry. Well, you got to start all over. You got to start your time over. To be able to have these groups that are supporting you in this process, because that's what it is. It is a process. To go cold turkey on this thing is so hard. Mm-hmm. To do it without help medically or and by medically, I mean not only whether it be naltrexone, but I'm talking therapy and counseling. To try to do this with just talking with people in a room is very, very hard to do. And then when you fail, the support isn't always what it should be. Yeah. And so, this just, there's so many, if you're struggling with quitting alcohol, I mean, this is a viable option to give it a shot, because what's it going to hurt, right? Yeah. I mean, I wish I would have known about this in 2020, when the wheels started to fall off. I wish I would have known something. So I wanted to ask too, what popped in my head now, what's the difference between the Vivitrol shot and naltrexone or the Sinclair method? What's the differences there?
Yeah, so naltrexone is used in several ways for alcohol addiction. There's been research into a variety of ways to use it. So the Sinclair method is for people who are currently drinking and they want to start recovery by cutting back on alcohol. A lot of people, I'd say most people, start this treatment with a goal to be a normal drinker, a social drinker, a moderate drinker. And some, I might estimate like 25%, like they know they want to quit drinking at the end. So that's who the Sinclair method is for. But to be honest, a lot of people, I was one of those people, I was like, I'm never going to quit drinking. But after a year on this treatment, it was like very easy to quit drinking. I didn't even mean to, I just did. So people's goals often evolve over time. But what's cool about TSM is it meets a person where they're at. Because, when we're struggling with alcohol, the thought of never drinking again is like terrifying. So for people to be like, okay, I can see myself reducing, like that's a good step. And then they continue on the treatment. Naltrexone in the tablet form outside of TSM is sometimes like it's the same medicine and everything, but sometimes it's used daily for people who are alcohol free to help with alcohol cravings, because it's been shown that it may help with alcohol cravings. And I get comments on my videos a lot from people who say that it has helped with their cravings and they don't drink. So that's another way to use it. If someone's currently sober and they're still craving and they want to see if this can help, it's a pretty benign medicine. It's worth a shot in my opinion. And then the Vivitrol shot is a long-acting injection. So it's a 28-day shot that someone gets in their behind, and it can be used for either drink reduction or being alcohol-free, and again, helping with cravings. With the Sinclair method in the shot, how I understand it is, typically you get it every 28 days, but what I've learned from physicians is that the shot actually really wears off around like the 3-week mark. So if someone is still drinking on the shot form of Vivitrol, their doctor may have them be taking the naltrexone tablet in addition to it, or getting the shot more frequently than the 28-day mark. The Vivitrol shot, if someone still wants to do the Sinclair method, but they might struggle with compliance, because you do have to, be diligent in taking the medicine before drinking. And sometimes compliance is a challenge for people. The doctor may put them on the Vivitrol shot just to ensure that, they have to make that decision once and they've got the medicine in their system for, the next 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah, they told me the doctor in this area, he told me he wasn't going to give me the Vivitrol shot because I drank too heavy. And he said that I wouldn't feel my drunk and I would keep drinking trying to chase it. That's what he told me.
See, I was just talking again, Dr. Volpicelli, he's become the medical advisor at our program. And so I was talking to him about this because I see that comment. I even saw it from a pharmacist on my YouTube, and she's like, you can't drink on this medicine because it blocks the buzz. You can't feel you're drunk. But what Dr. Volpicelli was saying is that I think there's this misunderstanding with how it works for opiates, because it is used for opiate use disorder. Right. If someone's on naltrexone and they take an opiate, they won't feel the effects. And so there may be risk of overdose on opiates, but that's not true with naltrexone. You still get drunk on naltrexone. Yes. You still feel the buzz, but it's just not as exciting or as euphoric. Like when I would start my first drink, I'd be like, I'm already thinking about the second, the third, the fourth, but with this, it just kind of slowed that down. And I wasn't thinking about my drinking as much, but you can still get drunk on the medicine.
And I can verify that because I was prescribed naltrexone to take it daily.
So
but right, and I did still get drunk. So I just quit taking it. Eventually I was like, well, this is too much work. I can't plan my day out and get this alcohol in here and get it hidden and still remember to take these pills in the morning. So I just said, screw it. But the big difference with the Sinclair method is that you take it, okay, I'm drinking tonight. I'm going to take it 1 hour before I start drinking, right? That's the meat and potatoes of it. Okay. Yeah, man, this is exciting stuff. I mean, I think this is really important. I really hope people listen to this and give it a good listen. So I got some questions that were thrown out there for some people. I'll go ahead and just read it. That way I'm not misrepresenting. Um, how do you think your message is received overall on social media, given the proliferation of step-based recovery, abstinence, and the promotion of it in this area? So how do you think your message is received through the AA people and on social media in general?
On social media in general, for people who are looking for an answer like I was, they are ecstatic to hear a message like the Sinclair method. And I mean, if you scroll through the comments on a lot of my videos on TikTok or YouTube, like you'll see people talking about how this medicine has saved their life, or this method saved their life, or they went from, a bottle of whiskey a day to 2 beers a week. You see these success stories all of the time. So for people who are looking for it or who are on it, you just like the comments and stuff don't lie. So I think in general, for the people who are receptive, like it's can be life-saving, just like it was for me. I stumbled upon it on YouTube. That's how I learned about it. But for those who are really 12-step or abstinence based, there are some that are supportive of it and they're like, cool, whatever works for you. I'm not here to say what's right for someone else, but there's like this small group of the hardcore 12-step or AA folks who they'll say things on my videos like, you're going to relapse. Like there's no such thing as an alcoholic drinking normally. Like we'll see you back in the rooms before you know it, or 12 steps is the only way. And so these kind of negative type of comments that really just to me show that somebody doesn't have an understanding of how the method and medication works, which I get it. It's a completely counterintuitive approach to address this issue, but there's a small percentage of people who are really opposed to this treatment, and they say so. They make it known for sure. But I would say more, a smaller group of people. It's kind of shocking for me at first when I was like newer to social media and I'd get these nasty, hateful comments and it would like really hit me. But now I'm kind of used to it.
Yeah, because you come across as such a mean and hateful, like, dangerous person. I mean,
Yeah, right.
These people, dude, if this is what I tell those people now. I'm like, if that is recovery, how you act and how you treat and talk to people, telling them they're going to drink again and wishing that they would drink again so they can find their way back to their rooms. If that's recovery, I don't want to have anything to do with your recovery. You can absolutely keep your recovery right where you have it. And it's I think you handle every single one very well, and that leads into the next question. Is it difficult to find common ground? Are you able to find common ground with most people? You think? I feel like I can. I feel like because I'm out there saying crazy things like I'm not an alcoholic anymore because I don't drink, and whoo boy, do people get freaked out about that shit. So I think the way that you handle yourself is very admirable. Is it easy to find common ground?
It's funny you say that because I made a video once where I just like casually, I was like, I'm a former alcoholic. And I really feel that way because I feel cured. And I was not expecting the hate. I was going to get on that. They're like, former? Who says you're a former? Like, you're always an alcoholic.
I do because it's my life. Jesus H.
I know, it's funny. Yeah, I'm surprised, like, to your point, like, I'm glad you kind of don't like, some people say calling themselves an alcoholic really helps them in recovery, but for me, it was not helpful. It encouraged me to drink more, and I don't want to have that identity on me for the rest of my life. So, yeah, to your question, like, I have kind of stopped trying to find middle ground with people. I would say most of the time, no, I don't find middle ground. Sometimes there'll be somebody open enough to be like, okay, cool, whatever works. But those people that are taking time to leave a comment and tell me how I work for a pharmaceutical company and that, which is not true. Naltrexone is generic. Like nobody's making money off this medicine. It's very cheap.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
Those people, I realize they just want to fight and they don't want to learn about other things. And so I used to spend a lot of time trying to respond to them through videos or comments and sending links to the science and things like that. And it was just not very fruitful. And what I've learned is that like my message is not to try to change their minds. My message is to reach people who are currently struggling and looking for a solution. So I am really choosy with like the battles I pick. And honestly, I don't really fight those battles anymore. Like as of the last 6 months, because it drains me and it's hard to get anywhere with someone whose mind is already made up and believes that the 12 steps is the one and only way that someone can get better.
And this is just coming from me. This does not reflect Katie at all, but I feel as if they've traded one addiction for another, and that they have to think in group think the way they do. So Sarah says that this is super interesting from a medical standpoint. I love learning new things about recovery and support. Thank you, Sarah. The next question is, I'll try to kind of combine them. I know Adam, so if I misrepresent him a little bit, he'll let me know it later. He has a friend who finally had a doc that was really willing to prescribe it. Is there a database of participating MDs or psychiatrists who are familiar and willing? I know that you said that you had found yours just by happen chance on YouTube. Is there somewhere now that people can go and look for this?
Yeah, there are telemedicine doctors in all across the U.S. In all states. There's some in Canada as well. I don't know where are they in the U.S.?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Georgia. I know for sure there's telemedicine doctors across the U.S. who will prescribe, and it makes it really nice because some people don't want to go to their regular doctor, or their regular doctor refuses the prescription because maybe they don't know about it or they're not comfortable with treating alcohol use disorders. So yes, there are physicians in all 50 states. Like if people join our program, we can refer them to the doctor that we work with. He's a telemedicine doctor. Or there's a listing on a nonprofit website, which is C3THREE foundation.org. So yes, there's a few different providers. They have different prices, but for the most part, they're pretty affordable. Like you pay to see the physician and then you can get your prescription at the pharmacy, or there's even ones where they can mail you the prescription in the mail via a subscription. So you get like a monthly supply or something like that.
Awesome. And it's almost like you knew what the next question was, because you had said that they don't want to go to their own doctor. He was talking in his follow-up question. He was talking about a friend who was trying to find somebody to prescribe him this, and he kept finding people just encouraging him to go to AA.
Yeah. Same thing happened to me when I first learned about it in 2017, because at that point in time, there weren't this directory of physicians that prescribe. Like so much has changed in the last 6 years. But I remember I had just moved to my area and I didn't have like a physician I was seeing yet. And so I went in my insurance portal and I called 5 different doctors in my area. None of them would prescribe. Because I was like, if I come in to see you, like, is there an option for me to get naltrexone? None of them would. They wanted me to go to rehab. They wanted me to go to AA. They wanted me to go to detox. And so I was very discouraged because I learned about this like life-saving treatment and I couldn't even get prescribed the medicine. But I continued the research and I did find a doctor who was in my state that was willing to prescribe. But it's really heartbreaking that still happens for people where they try to go to their doctor, maybe they bring a study about naltrexone and for whatever reason, the doctor won't prescribe it. I often say it's probably a 50-50 chance, 50% chance they will, 50% chance they won't. But I've even seen it where they're willing to prescribe. They're like, I'm only going to give you 3 months of it and you've got to be abstinent, so there's like caveats like that where it's like, that's not really like the Sinclair method is a long-term treatment. So if, that's where it's great to work with a telemedicine doctor who specializes in it and, will work with you on this treatment.
Yeah, I even doctors can get stuck in their ways or whatever. Abstinence. That's the only way to do this thing. It's really sad that harm reduction isn't more of a popular thing. Or MAT. Medically assisted treatment, or it's not more of a permitted thing, because with the success stories that you see on that you have and you talk about, man, it's helping people, it's saving people. I mean,
Yeah. I've gone to some addiction conferences, and harm reduction and medication-assisted treatment are gaining traction, but it's more so for the opiate use
yeah,
disorder space. Like, that's the new shiny addiction that everyone's focused on, which they should be. I'm not trying to negate that, but it's like
yeah.
kind of put alcohol in the back burner, and nobody's like, if you go to I went to a conference, and like over and over again, the whole agenda for like the 2 or 3 days, it's like opiate use disorder and maybe 1 or 2 sessions about alcohol. It's really interesting.
You can't go buy opiates while you get gas.
Right.
You can't go get a Mountain Dew and a fifth of opiates.
I know.
You can do that with alcohol, and again, it's not diminishing the opioid crisis or any crisis that we have. They're all crises. I mean, I'm a big fan of freedom and be able to do whatever you want, but the people that want to stop, alcohol is right in their face every single place that you go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And this has been very enlightening. I'm trying to look through the comments here to see if anything. Lindsay says that she got hers from a telehealth doctor.
Awesome.
Justin says that the shot does help with his cravings, so
Okay,
that's
great.
yeah, that's good to know.
Yeah, for people out there, like, because I made it 6 months sober one time before the Sinclair method, and it was very white-knuckled. I tried to get really into fitness and nutrition and other things, and I was, from the outside, my life looked more fulfilling and meaningful and stuff, but inside, I was just like, "Don't drink today, don't drink today, don't drink
Right.
today," and kind of fighting that urge. And so if I was sober then and knew about naltrexone, I probably would have tried it to see if it could have helped with my cravings. So it's a really cool medicine. Like, some people are like, so you're telling alcoholics to start drinking again to do this treatment. And that's, again, just like a misunderstanding, because though some people do that. Like, I've got several success stories on my YouTube of people who were sober in AA and knew a relapse was going to come at some point. So they transitioned to TSM. But this treatment is really for people who are actively drinking and can't quit and can't reduce or try to quit, and they keep relapsing. So TSM is ideal for those people, but also if you're sober and you just want some help with craving, like naltrexone could work for that as well.
I can't imagine if I would have came to see Dr. Katie and Dr. Katie would have said, "Hey, this is the Sinclair method. I would like you to try that." I can't imagine how excited I would have been to be like, okay, I can do both things right now. And then, like you said, though, with your experiences is really interesting that, oh, yeah, I can drink. And then, oh, shit, I didn't drink today. That's really cool. And that would have really, because most alcoholics that drink like you and I did, there is something else going on that you have to deal with. But you can't deal with that stuff when you're drunk all the time. And so, like you mentioned, you get some sober time and these things start to service, then you can finally, actually approach these things and give them some attention that they need. But just to have that clear mind and give you something to help, man, it's. I've been wanting to have you back on the podcast for a long time because I just think this is so important to put out there for people. Like, I just think of the miserable bastard that I was, 3-4 years ago, and where there was no hope. But just to hear something that can give you a little bit of hope, anything, I don't care what it is. Somebody come on and talk 12 steps and say abstinence is the only way. If their message gives people hope, then I want to do that too. But this is something else that everybody, you can go anywhere and hear a story like that. This is a story that is different, that I think can really help people.
Well, and I honestly, like, I have mad respect for people who are able to quit drinking or quit whatever substance and just not look back. And because I tried that so many times. And like I said, I made it 6 months one time, but in the back of my mind, if I'm honest with myself, I was like, I'm going to drink again one day. Like, I just I'm going to hold out as long as possible. So people who quit and stay quit and don't return, like, I have mad respect. And I think my challenge was I would go on YouTube and I would listen to hours and hours of AA success stories. I went to a couple meetings, but in my area, it just was not for me, that group. I was plugging into other spiritual support groups and things, just trying to fill my life with things outside of alcohol. But for me, I remember just listening to those stories and being like, okay, so what's the recipe I can follow? How do I do this? And of course there's the 12 step, but when I would try to mimic what was working for other people, I felt like there wasn't a way to do it. It was like the way that they were able to stay sober and not relapse. Like that's not something that just can happen by doing A, B, and C. It's
Yeah.
like I don't know what exactly causes those people to stay sober, and that was something I couldn't bottle it. I couldn't figure it out. It was like this fleeting thing that like, yeah, but how did you stay sober? I don't get that in your story. And I don't think any of us can really like say exactly. It's probably a combination of things like we really want it, we have a life to live, maybe we're just fed up, or maybe like me, I just lost my interest in alcohol. But that was the thing, like I could never grasp like, okay, but how did you stay sober? Like didn't you have cravings all of the time or things like that? And I've learned not everyone has alcohol cravings like I did, which I find interesting. But
Lucky
yeah,
bastards.
I know.
I mean, I still, I want to drink sometimes, but there's way more days that I don't. There's way more
Yeah.
days that I don't think about it, or it's like, it's more of, okay, well, I'm going to be a nerd tonight and play some video games. There's more of that.
Yeah.
I can't wait to watch WWE with Miley. Stupid things like that are in my head.
Yeah.
But those are more frequent than the, man, I really got to drink today.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. And it's hard to tell when it happens too. That's a frustrating thing for somebody that's just getting into this too, because I got to my year, and if anybody asked me like, okay, when did it happen? When did you turn the corner? Like, I have no idea. It was just gradual progress, and then all of a sudden I'm at a year. It's
Yeah.
really, really hard to explain.
Yeah, and I was recently going through an older interview I did with someone he was in AA for 2.5 years, sober for 2.5 years, but he was talking about how he was extremely committed to the program, doing all the step work, volunteering, being sponsor, all that, and he's like, it's not working. Like I'm doing everything, and they're like, well, pray harder, or get more involved,
Oh,
and he just couldn't get it to work, even though he's following all of the steps, and he talks about his experience, which is part of the Sinclair method research, of something called the alcohol deprivation effect, where when you're sober from alcohol, after your brain has become addicted, you can become deprived of it to where the craving kind of shoots up and all you want to do is drink because of your brain kind of craving that reward from the alcohol. And so I've heard stories like that a lot from people who are doing everything in AA or going in and out of rehab or IOPs or whatever program, and they're like, this isn't working, I still want to drink. Like, am I just supposed to like fight that craving for the rest of my life? And yeah, and when you said like you get those cravings, like naltrexone can be used in those moments. I remember the longer I was on the Sinclair method, I was going longer and longer without drinking, but there'd be days where I'd be like, okay, I feel like having a drink today, so I'd pop naltrexone, and by the time the medicine set in, I'd be like, I don't feel like drinking anymore. So I saw it working as an anti-craving medicine for me as well, to where I had the urge, I had the craving, took the naltrexone, but then I changed my mind. I was like, doesn't sound good anymore. So, yeah, I experienced that as well.
It's so important. We're getting down to the end of the interview, and we got the most viewers that we've had. So, just to kind of recap, Katie is Katie. Well, you go ahead and just recap who you are and what you do real quick before we get to the end of this thing.
Yeah, so I'm a Sinclair method success story, and I'm a huge advocate of naltrexone for alcohol use disorder. Starting in 2017, it freed me of the addiction, and I just started telling my story on YouTube, and that turned into me coaching, and now we have a private online program that supports people through the treatment at thrivealcoholrecovery.com. And on my social media, I'm always putting out lots of videos and content on TikTok and YouTube and X and Instagram and things like that. So if you're just curious to learn more about it or follow along, you can find us there.
Yeah, hit pause right now and re-listen to those last 15 seconds to write down all that stuff. This is really good information. She does great videos, has great stories to talk about, or people talking about their success stories with Sinclair method. Katie, thank you for doing this. It's, man, any pathway that we can put out there for people to walk, I think is important. Anything that's worked for anybody, and this one I think can work for people. And I have a lot of people that follow me that are strong AA people. I just hope that people can find, most people I think are, if it's working for you, then do it. I don't care. It wouldn't work for me. Like right now, I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, should I go get some naltrexone? And but it's like, no, dude, you made it this freaking far. You're good. Just keep doing what you've been doing, But that little bit of whatever in my mind is like, So
Yeah.
So I know that it's not for me. I'm past that point, and I'm living, with purpose and happiness today. It's never perfect, but it's way
Right.
better than it was. And so, thank you so much for coming on and sharing this, Katie. Very, very great stuff. And let's stay in contact, and I'll keep trying to promote your message because it's a good one.
Thanks. Same to you, Scott. You're doing awesome work. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks. Well, thanks for listening, guys and gals at home. Make sure to like and subscribe. And if you have a question later on, if you listen to this later on, get it to me and I'll shoot it over to Katie and I'll let you know what she says, or I'll tag you in it if you're on social media with us. So, all right. Thanks again, Katie, and we will talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.